Am I the jerk for blocking my ex when she broke up with me? Hey everyone. I just made this account today because I'm dealing with a lot of drama from my sister and parents, and I genuinely don't see how I'm in the wrong. So here's the story. I'm 19 years old, and my ex-girlfriend Sarah is 20. We dated for 3 years, and she broke up with me this Sunday night. The breakup wasn't even in person. She did it over text. She told me that she felt like my lack of ambition was holding her back and that she needed to move on with her life because she felt like I didn't value her. When I got that message, I didn't feel like arguing or begging her to stay. I just said okay, blocked her number, and went to sleep. I was really tired and didn't want to deal with it. I didn't block her friends, though, and that's where things started to get messy. Yesterday morning, I woke up to a ton of messages from her friends. They were all asking me to unblock her and talk to her. They said she was really upset and needed closure. My sister, who is also 20 and friends with my ex, got involved too. She told me that Sarah was hurt by how I just blocked her out of nowhere and that Sarah still wanted to talk to me to get some closure and make sure I was okay. I told my sister that I was fine and that I didn't want to talk to Sarah. I asked her if she could just let Sarah know that I appreciated her checking in on me, but I wasn't interested in having a conversation. My sister didn't like that answer at all. She said Sarah had made a really hard decision and just wanted to have one last conversation with me. I repeated that I was fine and didn't want to talk. My sister then told me that I was acting too calm for someone who just got out of a 3-year relationship. She asked if I cried, and I said no. I didn't cry. I just fell asleep listening to music. She seemed really worried about my lack of emotion and told me that my behavior wasn't normal. She said it wasn't normal not to cry or feel sad after a breakup like this. I told her that I didn't have to cry over anything and that it was weird. She was acting like I should. It felt like she was more upset about the breakup than I was. My sister kept pushing, saying it wouldn't hurt to have one conversation with Sarah because she was worried about me and still wanted to be friends. I told her again that I was fine and didn't want to talk to Sarah at this point. I was getting really frustrated. My sister then said that my lack of compassion was psychotic. That really pissed me off. I mean, how can she call me psychotic just because I'm not reacting the way she thinks I should? I started ignoring her because I couldn't deal with it anymore. She eventually left me alone, but the whole situation had me really stressed out. This morning, I woke up to a bunch of text messages from my sister again. She was still trying to get me to talk to Sarah. I was done with it, so I blocked her too. I know it sounds harsh, but I felt like I needed some peace and quiet. Blocking her was the only way I could think of to get her to stop bothering me. My sister didn't take it well. She went and told our parents about everything. Now my parents are upset with me too. They said it was wrong of me to block Sarah without talking to her first. They said we've been together long enough that they thought of her as a second daughter, and they were really disappointed in how I handled things. I was just so aggravated at this point. I told my parents that I appreciated their concern, but they needed to mind their own business. They didn't stop, though. They kept telling me that I should at least have a conversation with Sarah for closure and out of respect for the relationship we had. I finally told them that if they kept pushing me, I wouldn't hesitate to block them too. That finally got them to stop. They apologized and said they didn't mean any harm. They just felt like it was inconsiderate of me to block Sarah without talking to her first. But they said they wouldn't press me to talk to her if I didn't want to. So here I am feeling really confused and frustrated. My sister and parents are acting like I'm some kind of heartless monster because I didn't cry or want to talk to Sarah after the breakup. But I don't think I'm in the wrong. I just wanted to handle things in a way that felt right for me. Is it really so bad to not want to have a big emotional conversation after getting dumped over text? I don't know. I just feel like everyone is acting, and making things way more complicated than they need to be. Now for the comments before reading the update, not the jerk. She can't have it both ways. She can't dump you and then expect to still maintain as much contact as she pleases. Nobody is stopping her from still being friends with your sister. So it's not like your parents won't still get to see their second daughter sometimes. You don't owe her or anyone else closure about how your relationship ended. Period. If I were in your shoes, the thing that I would very much like to say to the sister is this. She left me so she could focus on herself. She should be doing that now, or else her breaking up with me was pointless, wasn't it? I would say that I didn't see the part where I felt nothing, just that I didn't want to talk about it. People process things differently just because I didn't cry and skip the denial. Anger and bargaining steps of grief doesn't mean I am not upset or sad or grieving, just that I am not behaving as everyone else expected. That part where neither the sister nor the ex cares about my boundaries and feelings, whatever they may be, is really telling. They don't even want closure. The breakup and blocking were the closure. What they want is a performance. But they need to realize that I am not a people-pleasing actor like they likely are. Most people pleasers expect everyone else to be that way too, and can get pretty unpleasant when faced with the reality that someone isn't. Then everyone claims the recipient of the text is a jerk. That is crazy how the feeling girlfriend didn't want to break out, but rather have me up myself to whatever she deems good enough. My sister's reaction is strange as well to invest in this drama that isn't one. Are you kidding? She says she doesn't want to date you and then is mad when you contact her. She can't have it both ways. She dumped you. She chose to end it. She's the jerk for making her inability to deal with her emotions about the breakup. Your problem? Like, why should you babysit her emotions when she is dumping you? Thank you. I don't understand why everyone was making it seem like I was in the wrong when I wasn't even the one who broke up with her. Now for the update. Hey everyone, sorry I haven't updated you sooner. A lot went down last week and it totally slipped my mind. So here's what happened. About a week ago during Easter, something really unexpected happened. My ex-girlfriend Sarah showed up at my parents' house out of the blue and she was with my sister. None of us, including my parents, knew she was coming, which was a pretty big shock. She told us that she had no other way to talk to me since I had blocked her when we had a chance to talk. She told me she was really hurt because I blocked her so quickly after our breakup. She felt like it meant I didn't care about her at all. She also said something that confused me a lot. She mentioned she thought I loved her enough to want to change and improve myself for her. That threw me off because during our breakup, she told me that I was holding her back and that she needed to move on. I mean, think about it. If someone told you that you were stopping them from achieving their dreams, wouldn't you feel like stepping back too? I told her that I might have even tried to convince her to stay, if she hadn't said those things about me holding her back. We talked a bit more, but it was really awkward. After our talk, she left with my sister. But when my sister came back, she was really upset with me. She thought I was being mean by making Sarah cry and said I was punishing her just because she cared about me. That wasn't my intention at all, but it seemed like everything I did just made things worse. My parents weren't happy with my sister because they felt she shouldn't have brought Sarah over, especially without telling anyone. It made everyone feel uncomfortable, and the whole vibe at our house turned weird because of the drama. Since then, I've just been laying low and trying to chill. All of this drama has really made me think, and I've decided I'm probably not going to date anyone for a while, especially not someone who's friends with my sister. It's just too messy, and it feels like my sister is way too involved in my personal stuff, which is a bit overwhelming story too. My ex-wife divorced me after a personality change. I found out that I have a brain tumor. How do I move forward? My name's Mike and I'm 32 years old. My ex-wife Linda is 33. She divorced me in 2022. I was devastated, but I couldn't blame her. We'd been together for about 6 years, and for a while we had an incredible relationship. We had a memorable engagement in Belize. A long story involving boats getting stranded at the Mayan ruins where I proposed to her and being rescued by a passing British military exercise. But that's a whole other story. I won't wax poetic about it, but suffice it to say, it's the happiest I've ever been. And I think I made her very happy too. She was my best friend and we were ready to spend the rest of our lives together. I was extremely close to our whole family as well. I was her brother's best man at his wedding. But then trouble started. My mental health took a steep decline. My behavior was extremely erratic and bizarre. When we were in public, I often thought I was being followed. One time I became convinced listening devices had been implanted in our home. I thought the police or government agencies were after me and monitoring my devices. Linda finally dragged me to the emergency room after one of these incidents, and I ended up getting diagnosed as having a psychotic break with bipolar and schizoaffective disorder. Linda stood by me through it all, but even on treatment, I continued my strange behavior and thought patterns. There was lying and substance abuse previously. I'd only ever drunk socially and occasionally smoked weed. It was all very out of character for me. I'd always been a very stable person, but I seemed to be spiraling. One day Linda had enough and told me she wanted a divorce. She caught me lying about drug use for a while. I maintained contact with her brother who tried to support us both through it, but eventually he cut me off too. In the year following the divorce, I tried emailing and texting Linda and her brother, but eventually I got the hint. Mutual friends dropped me too. I can't blame anybody. I think additional lies and misbehavior had come to light, so I was a pariah. I think pretty low. Lost multiple jobs and barely scraped by. Fast forward to now. I'm still struggling, but I've managed to hold a good, well-paying job and even bought a few properties. I got a new little pup named Max who keeps me going when times get tough. I've kept it therapy, and it's definitely helped. But recently, while traveling, I suddenly collapsed. I went to the hospital, and when the doctor heard my history, he immediately ordered an MRI. The look on his face and his whole demeanor spooked me like he suspected something that he didn't want to tell me, but he insisted on just waiting to see and not speculating. Lo and behold, I have a brain tumor. The funny thing is, when I found out, I was relieved. Finally, it all made sense. Apparently, it's not unheard of for such a thing to be misdiagnosed as bipolar. The doctors say it has probably been growing slowly for a long time and explains my strange and out of character behavior. Thankfully, they think it's treatable. And with surgery, I stand to make a good recovery. So, how do I move forward with this? I want to try to reach out to Linda and her brother, but maybe they've moved on with their lives, and I shouldn't try to reinsert myself. I've done enough damage as it is. They don't seem to want to have any contact with me, but I also feel like they should know. They may have blocked my number and email, but I do still have some mutual friends that I could reach out through. For all I know, Linda is in another relationship, and I shouldn't reopen those wounds. But if the roles were reversed, I'd want her to let me know. So how should I move forward here? What, if anything, should I say? I think you should just try your best to reach out to her now for the update. So, first of all, thanks everybody for the comments and advice. I didn't expect my post to get as much attention as it did, but it was really helpful to get some perspective. Not to mention lots of support, including some very thoughtful messages. It got reposted in other places. I didn't even realize there was an entire ecosystem of TikToks devoted to rehashing Reddit posts. I guess I'm old LOL, including some news sites and a few journalists and podcasters reached out to me. I'm touched that my stories seem to resonate with some people, but I'm a pretty private person, and I'm working through a lot right now, so apologies if I haven't responded to your messages. Long story short, I've decided not to contact Linda or her brother for the time being. I know some people were probably rooting for a happier, or at least a more interesting ending, but this is how I'm handling things for now. I think the majority of the comments in my last post encouraged me to reach out just to inform Linda of the situation and maybe give her some closure. Some suggested making a post on social media so it would get back to her, or delivering a message through a mutual friend for a while. Something along these lines is what I wanted to do. Now, for the social media thing, I don't actually have any social media other than an Instagram account for my pup Max, which has like 10 followers, and a Facebook account using a fake name with 0 friends. I use it for Marketplace, but that's kind of beside the point. I think more importantly, not reaching out right now just feels like the right move. I guess the true question is, what would be the best way to handle this for Linda? How does this affect her? And honestly, the more I think about it, the more it seems like reaching out is the selfish move. She's always been a strong, resilient person, so I have no doubt she's managed to build a good life and move on, and I'd just be potentially interfering with that, stirring up old hurts and wounds and maybe adding a lot of confusion and other complicated emotions. I would just go with your gut instincts. And then from a selfish perspective, I don't think it would be good for me either. I admit a part of me fantasized about a situation where we got back together, all was forgiven, and we lived happily ever after. But I think that's exactly the problem. I realized there was no way I was going to ever be able to temper my expectations. So right now, with everything going on, it probably would be a bad thing to add into the mix. I'll always love Linda. We grew up together. I loved her quirks and her silliness and her strength, the way she always stood up for what she believed in. The fact that we always had so much fun together, whether we were playing a board game, she'd learn quick and kick my ass, except for Race for the Galaxy, or buying a house or going on a bike ride somewhere, or overanalyzing a movie or a TV show that we'd watch together. She's brilliant and hilarious and gorgeous and a total weirdo. Very early in our relationship, she asked whether I was a barfer or a crier when I got sick. I was also the DM for a dad campaign that she played in, and her Goblin Rogue will always be peak tabletop gaming to me. I love hearing her thoughts about everything. I miss her every day, and who knows, maybe we'll reconnect at some point in the future. I'm not ruling out ever contacting her, and in case it wasn't clear in my last post, I never thought my tumor exonerated me of responsibility for everything that I've done. I know I still need to take ownership of my actions and learn and grow from this. So that's what I'm going to focus on: getting better. My surgery is getting scheduled, and then I'll just have to take it one step at a time. There's a lot of other stuff going on too. I was applying and interviewing for jobs before all this and actually got 2 offers recently, so I'll be communicating with them about whether we could delay the start date. Worst case, if not, my current job is secure, and medical leave won't be a problem. I also bought another property, although the sale is still conditional, so I could walk away if I have to. We'll see how it goes. All this to say, life is pretty hectic right now, but I honestly feel good. And for the first time in several years, I'm looking forward to what comes next, wherever that may be anyway. Thanks again, everybody, for reading and commenting, sharing your advice and stories, well wishes, and love. I might post another update down the road, but fair warning. I'm hoping it's just as boring as this one. Story 3. Am I the jerk for keeping score with my family and ruining dinner? I'm 27 years old and I'm the third of 4 siblings. My siblings are Laura, who's 33, Chuck, who's 29, and Jill, who's 25. I've always felt like an afterthought. Laura, Chuck, and Jill have always gotten the first and best from my parents and each other. I get the leftovers if I'm lucky. I haven't gotten a birthday present from any of my siblings in about 10 years, but I still get asked to pitch in for group gifts for each of them every year. On Friday night, we were having a family dinner, and it honestly felt like every other sentence was a dig at me or a less than subtle brag about my siblings. They talked about how nice all of their weddings were. They made sure to mention it was okay that my wife Stacy and I had a small, low-key wedding, and it was okay and we loved it. But they brushed over the fact that my parents paid for all of my siblings' weddings, but not mine, because somehow they couldn't afford it, because they were saving it for Jill's wedding. They brought up how little student loans they have because my parents helped them, and all of them lived on campus at expensive four-year schools. I lived at home and went first to a very prestigious, very hard to get into watchmaking school. I got paid to attend the school, so I paid rent at home. My parents paid for my tools, and I appreciate the help. I really do. They paid $120,000 to $150,000 each for my siblings. They gave me $7,000 for tools, but to them, it's equal. When I went back to school on my own, I didn't ask for money and wasn't offered it. When my brother went back to school, they covered everything without him even having to ask. There were many other small moments, comments about cars and other lifestyle choices, but what made me snap was my brother and his wife mentioning their marriage being so great because they do things like spontaneous dates, like the one that they had the prior Friday night, the Friday night where my parents called my wife and me at the last minute to cancel plans that they had to eat dinner at our house because they had to watch Chuck's kids because of an emergency. Turns out that emergency was dinner for Chuck and his wife at Texas Roadhouse. I had spent hours making my grandpa's lasagna and meatballs with homemade marinara because it's my mom's favorite. I wanted more than anything to scream at them, but instead I got up and left without saying a word, and my wife followed me. When my mom called me later to ask why I left, I just explained exactly why I explained the favoritism, the unfairness, and the fact that it doesn't feel like they really care about me. She didn't say much, and I wasn't really looking for an explanation or an apology. During the moment, I just felt like it was self-evident that if she really didn't see it, I'd spell it out. Evidently, at least parts of what I said have been shared with my siblings because now Chuck and Laura are furious at me saying I ruined dinner and my mom is upset that I'm hurt. They say I'm immature for keeping score. Am I the jerk? Now for the update. Mini update from me. I don't know where the best place to put all this, so I'm putting it here if that's okay. My first draft contains some of this info, but I had to edit a lot to get down to the character limit. Some of this has been shared in other comments, but I'm just consolidating it in hopes that this is seen and answers questions. There's no reason to believe I'm not my father's child. The list of genetic coincidences that would be necessary for that to be the case is long and not worth rehashing. He doesn't have any male relatives that could explain it either. He has one sibling, my aunt, and none of his cousins have ever been in his life, or even remotely local. I look just like my paternal grandfather. I always have. He died when my father was young, but by all accounts he was a good father and is remembered fondly. My younger sister Jill has been the beneficiary of many, if not most, of the things my parents chose not to give to me. But she did not ask for any of that, and has been one of the only people consistently trying to make it right. I mean, for goodness sake, she was trying to fix it when she was 6. She has definitely not seen everything, but what she has seen. She has tried to correct. She's perhaps guilty of assuming the best of people and not asking questions, even though she isn't heartless. Getting angry at her isn't going to fix anything. We talked for a long time after I posted this. She had been told she was contributing to a birthday gift for me every year since at least 2018. She gave money to my older sister to buy my wife and me tickets to my favorite soccer team. And then, when my wife and I inevitably posted about going to games, she assumed one of the games we went to each year was the gift that she had been contributing money towards. There's a lot of backstory there, but the gist of it is Jill and I have always gotten along well, and Jill does not participate in singling me out negatively. She and her husband spend a lot of time with my wife and me frequently, usually just the 4 of us. I was definitely favored by my maternal grandfather growing up, but it's not like I got extra gifts or anything. He and I just have very similar personalities, and that showed at a young age. I am on the spectrum, and I feel very strongly that were he my age, he would have been diagnosed as well. We both struggle mightily with a lot of sensory things, but loud crowds and being surrounded by a lot of disparate sources of noise, like perhaps his loud Italian family, overwhelms both of us. So both of us hide for at least some portion of family gatherings. Over time, we started hiding together by just leaving to play poker or locking ourselves in the kitchen to cook. As an adult, he has made comments that indicate that he sees that I'm not being given as much in the last 2 to 3 years. He has definitely given more items to me than anyone else. Things he wants me specifically to have if and when he passes, and that he wants me to enjoy now. That was definitely a source of tension on Friday. He is quite wealthy, and my older siblings were accusing me of trying to enrich myself based on inheritance. I have no clue what his plans are, and I have not, and will never ask. It's not my business, and he has always had a pathological need to make things. Even everyone gets the same number of boxes at Christmas with as near as possible the exact amount of money spent on each recipient. So I do not expect him to behave differently with his estate. I honestly expect that anything that doesn't go to charitable causes will be divided evenly, but I really think it's all going to charity. But where my older siblings see the monetary value of his record collection and view it as a financial windfall, I just see a beautiful collection of music I get to keep listening to. I'd never sell that. They feel that I'm hoarding the antique watches he gave me, the most valuable of which is a 60s Timex Marlin. But again, they just want me to sell them and divide the cash. First of all, they aren't valuable except in sentiment. Second of all, Pop. Pop is very much still alive and only gave them to me because he knows I will repair the ones I like and wear them. Selling them would be extremely rude and entitled. They're angry that he gave me his first nice car because it does have a nominal value even now. Too old to be valuable as a reliable vehicle. Not old or rare or desirable enough to be a collector's item, but to me it's a sentimental item. It was a Sunday car for years, and while I have had to put a lot of work into keeping it running, well, it's in excellent cosmetic condition. My older siblings are contesting that I'm actually his favorite, and the very memorable and extremely generous financial gifts given to them by my parents were somehow dwarfed by their very inflated estimation of the financial value of the gifts my grandfather has given me recently. My paternal grandmother has openly favored me more and more as I've aged. Again, this is not financial, and to my knowledge, she isn't in a position to leave me an inheritance. Not that I'd even ask that of her. There's an old clock of hers made by a local clockmaker and housed in a handmade cabinet that I used to spend hours looking at when I was really young, and that she actually put multiple labels inside of as early as when I was 5 or 6 saying that it belongs to me. But I didn't ask for that. I appreciate it, and I will gladly accept it if she feels that way when the time comes. But I don't spend the time I spend with her as some sort of plot to steal her clock. I just feel like hanging out with my grandma. She's a really funny lady, and she likes walking with my wife and me and her dogs. She stays with us in her house on holidays instead of staying in the guest house my parents had built for her. My siblings are under the impression that she has somehow supported me financially again, unless there is something that I'm not aware of. She is very much not in a position to do this. My wife and I will be meeting with my parents at some point over the next week to talk. I do not know what to expect, but I will be taking the time to write stuff down in preparation. I don't even know what I want from it, but I will be bringing up family therapy now for the full update. So update time, about a week after that post, my wife and I sat down with my parents and cleared the air as several people suggested. I wrote down my thoughts and compiled to the best of my knowledge a listing and full accounting of the disparity in what my siblings were given over the years and what I was given. I did actually sit down and do the math, and it turns out that while I was at the technical school, I actually paid my parents more in rent than they ever paid for my tools. But the final reckoning came to between $370,000 on the high end for Laura to $190,000 on the low end for Chuck. For how much my parents directly gave to my siblings that they never gave me. Sitting down and seeing the full amount of all this spelled out that way is probably the angriest I got during this whole mess. My parents have been aware that there were discrepancies, but really pushed back on the actual amounts until we sat down and went through each major gift incident, case by case, by which point my dad admitted my reckoning was likely conservative. That was more or less the end of any productive talk that night. My dad just claimed that they didn't think it had gotten that bad, but wouldn't give any details about how they could have possibly not noticed in the interim. Chuck and Laura continued to escalate their anger, calling and texting me, my parents, and extended family. I have not spoken to either of them directly since and don't expect to anytime soon. Roughly a week after that first sit-down, my mom and dad asked to meet again. A lot of things were said, but the gist is they felt I was doing well and didn't need their help. Basically, they thought I would be fine without them. They admitted they probably live outside their means and gave more to my older siblings than they should have and could never have given me that much. They claimed the timing of my wedding lined up with probably the most dire of their overspending and lack of saving, and that they literally did not have the funds to live up to their promise, especially as they were paying for Jill's tuition, car, and apartment at that time. They've offered money. They have offered to pay for vacations, a car, all kinds of stuff. But I think they don't really get it yet. My wife and I don't want their money, but we aren't really sure yet what an ideal resolution to this looks like. And since they have admitted that they were unfair and are open to working things out, my wife and I spent Easter with Jill and her husband and my grandparents. My mom and dad came over in the evening. This seems to be more or less the new normal for now. After that Easter, things started to settle into a new normal. My relationship with my parents was still strained, but at least they were making an effort to understand my perspective. They even suggested we all go to family therapy together, which I agreed to. It seemed like a step in the right direction. Family therapy was tough. It brought up a lot of old wounds, and sometimes it felt like we were going in circles. But over time, we started to make progress. My parents began to realize just how much their actions had hurt me, and they genuinely seemed sorry. They even started treating Jill better, which was a relief. It was like they finally woke up to the fact that they had been playing favorites all these years. Meanwhile, my wife Stacy and I focused on building our own little family with our dog Max. We decided to move to a different city for a fresh start. It was a big decision, but we felt like it was the right one. We found a nice house with a big yard for Max to play in, and Stacy started a new job that she loved. I continued working at my job remotely, which was a blessing. One day out of the blue, I got a message from Chuck. It was a long text and he apologized for how he had treated me. He said he didn't realize how much his actions had hurt me until he started going to therapy himself. He wanted to make amends and asked if we could meet up to talk. I was hesitant at first, but I agreed. When we met up, Chuck seemed different. He was more humble and genuinely remorseful. We talked for hours, and by the end of it, I felt like we had turned a new leaf. It was a huge relief to finally have that conversation. Laura also reached out eventually, and while it took a bit longer for us to reconcile, we did. Through all this, Jill remained my rock. She was always there for me, and our bond only grew stronger. She and her husband visited us often, and we made new memories together. My grandparents also played a big role in my healing process. They were always supportive and understand. King and their wisdom helped guide me through some of the toughest times. As for my ex-wife Linda, I decided to let her be. I heard through the grapevine that she had moved on and was happy, and that was enough for me. I realized that sometimes the best way to show love is to let go. I wished her well and focused on my own journey. In the end, I learned a lot from these experiences. I learned the importance of setting boundaries, standing up for myself, and the power of forgiveness. I also learned that family is not just about blood, but about who stands by you when times are tough. My journey was far from easy, but it made me stronger and more resilient. Life is still a work in progress, and I still have my ups and downs, but I feel more at peace now than I ever have. I'm hopeful for the future and grateful for the support system I have. And most importantly, I'm learning to let go of the past and embrace whatever comes next. Thank you to everyone who listened, offered advice, and supported me through this journey. Your kindness and understanding meant more than you could ever know. Here's to new beginnings and finding peace, one step at a time, one step at a